Every corner of Claire's townhouse is perfectly designed, except her marriage. The filtered morning light slid through sheer white drapes, kissing the marble countertops and gliding across hardwood floors with curated precision. Claire stood barefoot in her silent kitchen, pouring hot water over loose-leaf Earl Grey in the same slow, deliberate rhythm she applied to everything in her life. The teacup, a delicate bone china heirloom with pale blue hydrangeas, clinked softly against its saucer, a sound that once soothed her. Today, it felt a little too fragile. She leaned against the island, staring out toward the dining area where sunlight pooled beneath the antique walnut table. On the far wall, just beyond the fresh bouquet of eucalyptus and dahlias she'd arranged yesterday, hung their wedding portrait, Claire in soft ivory, Nate in navy with a knowing smirk. They looked timeless, perfect, until her eyes caught it. The frame hung slightly crooked. It would have taken her 2 seconds to straighten it. She didn't. Instead, she sipped her tea and let the imbalance simmer in her mind. From upstairs, the sound of a drawer slamming broke the quiet. Nate was awake. Moments later, he appeared at the top of the staircase, already dressed in a crisp blue shirt and slacks, tie dangling untied around his neck. He scrolled absently through his phone, not yet aware she was watching. "You're early," Claire said, keeping her tone light. Nate glanced up, startled for a half-second. "Client crisis in Tokyo. Might need to check in before the appointment." She nodded. Of course you do." He descended, planting a quick kiss on her cheek before grabbing a piece of toast she hadn't made for him. His cologne drifted behind him, sharp, floral, not quite his usual scent. Claire's eyes narrowed slightly. "You changed cologne?" He froze, toast halfway to his mouth. "What? No, same one, just, maybe older bottle." Claire said nothing. She bought all his cologne. That scent wasn't in the rotation. She let it pass, just as she'd let it pass last weekend, when he claimed to be working late, but didn't log into the home VPN. Or when he moved his phone charger to the guest room and began taking calls on the balcony. Or how, lately, he touched her only as habit, like reaching for a wallet. Nate disappeared into the bathroom. Claire opened the fridge, pulled out a small bowl of pre-cut fruit, and began to arrange it on a dish like nothing was wrong. Like the room didn't feel 10 degrees colder than it should. Later, after he left, "Just for a quick call before we go." She wandered into the bedroom to gather laundry. She moved robotically, socks, camisoles, a towel still faintly damp. Then she reached for Nate's gym shorts and something slipped out of the pocket. A receipt. Claire's breath caught. She picked it up and read carefully. Bello and Crown Jewelers. Item. Gold pendant. Emerald inlay. Message engraving. To Aubrey. Always. She stared at the paper, blinking twice, as if the letters might rearrange themselves into something innocent, something explainable. They didn't. Her mind catalogued the facts, stacking them like design elements in a mock-up. The scent, the missed calls, the cold kiss, the Tokyo excuse that didn't match his firm's hours. And now, this. She folded the receipt slowly, her fingers trembling only slightly, slipped it into the back pocket of her jeans, and walked to the bathroom to brush her hair. 10 minutes later, Nate emerged, fresh and casual, as though the universe had not just shifted. He wrapped his arms around her from behind and pressed his lips to her temple. "Don't worry, love, I wouldn't miss this for the world." Claire forced a smile. A whiff of perfume becomes the match to light months of suspicion. Claire's fingers toyed with the rim of her cappuccino cup, tracing the faint circle of foam that had begun to cool. Across from her, Jenna leaned back in her chair, sunglasses perched high on her head, the breeze tugging at her copper scarf. Back Bay bustled behind them, joggers, stroller moms, dogs straining on leashes. The world moved as if it knew nothing of betrayal. "You haven't said it out loud yet," Jenna said, stirring her drink. "Just say it. He's cheating." Claire exhaled. "Barely a sound. I don't know that yet." "You do," Jenna said flatly. "You just don't want to be right." The cafe smelled of roasted beans and buttery croissants, but Claire could still summon the ghost of that floral scent, the kind that lingered on Nate's collar and didn't belong to her. She heard Jenna's words again, words she once gave as advice after her own divorce. "If something feels off, it probably is." "I found a receipt," Claire murmured, "from a jewelry store. A necklace, with an engraving, to Aubrey." Always. Jenna blinked once, then reached into her purse and pulled out a business card, sliding it across the table. Marshall Grant. Discreet. Legal. Unshakable. He helped me catch Tim transferring money to that little grad student he was just mentoring. You want him? Claire didn't pick up the card. She stared at it, like it was a switch she could flip. And nothing would ever be the same. Jenna leaned forward. Do this your way. Claire. Quiet. Strategic. Not like me. Torching the house at midnight with a bottle of wine and a shredder. Claire almost smiled. Almost. By evening, the sun had dipped behind the slate roofs of their neighborhood. Claire sat in her home office. Laptop open. Nate humming to himself in the bathroom. Shower water pounded against tile as she unlocked his tablet, same passcode since college. He never thought she'd look. Messages flicked across the screen. Claire scrolled. Quick texts from clients, coworkers, apps. Then a thread labeled, Aubrey kiss mark. Her heart thumped once. Hard. Claire tapped it open. Aubrey. Still thinking about last night. That freckle near your hip? Naughty. Nate. Guilty. Miss that laugh. You free Friday? Claire read through the thread twice. It wasn't just sex. It was attention, playfulness, intimacy that hadn't touched their marriage in months. She moved to the voice memos folder. One recently deleted. She recovered it. The message was faint, background traffic. A breathy giggle. Then a woman's voice. I can't wait to meet your little secret. Claire froze. Her hand trembled only slightly as she opened her phone and dialed. Marshall Grant. A voice answered. Her voice was calm. I need everything. Phone records. Bank statements. Wherever he goes when he says he's at the gym. I want names. Addresses. Timestamps. There was a brief pause on the other end. Understood. I'll be in touch within 48 hours. She ended the call. Stared out the window where the streetlights had begun to glow like tiny lanterns of warning. An hour later, Claire met Jenna again, this time in Jenna's parked car near the Esplanade. Windows rolled halfway down. Jenna watched her quietly. What are you going to do if it's all true? Claire's eyes didn't leave the skyline. I'll let him destroy himself. I'll just set the stage. The first sound their daughter hears is the heartbeat, followed by the unraveling of their family. Claire arrived 15 minutes early. The clinic's waiting room was quiet, sterile, painted in pastel tones clearly chosen to soothe anxious mothers-to-be. She smoothed the hem of her charcoal-wrapped dress, adjusted her scarf, and crossed her legs carefully. No tremor in her fingers. No flicker in her gaze. She looked immaculate, because today demanded control. On the wall across from her hung a framed image of a baby in utero. Grainy black and white, smiling as if from another world. Claire studied it for a moment. They should frame the truth instead. She thought. Ultrasounds showed beginnings, but not endings. At precisely 10:01, the glass door swished open. Nate stepped in, face flushed, jacket open, tie absent, and beside him, trailing a touch too close, was Aubrey, 20-something, golden brown waves cascading down her back, designer sneakers, oversized sunglasses, a thin smile she didn't know was ill-timed. Claire stood. Nate's mouth twitched. Hey, he said, like they were meeting for coffee. Ran into Aubrey on the way up. Total coincidence. She was just tagging along? Claire finished. Voice flat. That's generous. Aubrey blinked. I can wait outside if. No need, Claire said. Her eyes didn't leave Nate's. We're all here now. The nurse called her name. Claire nodded, walked with smooth, deliberate steps toward the hallway. Behind her, Nate and Aubrey followed, the silence between them thicker than the autumn air outside. The ultrasound room was cool and bright. Nina, the tech, smiled gently. Let's take a look at this little one. Claire lay back on the table, pulled up her blouse, and turned toward the screen. The gel was cold, but she didn't flinch. A heartbeat. Fast, steady, alive. For a few seconds, no one spoke. Then Nina said, there she is, about the size of a lemon now. Claire stared at the flicker on the monitor. Her chest tightened, not from sorrow, but from resolve. She reached for her purse on the chair beside her. Nate, still standing by the door, watched warily. Aubrey looked confused. Claire pulled out a thick white envelope. She took the ultrasound printout from Nina's hand, slid it into the envelope, and sealed it slowly. Then she stood, wiped the gel from her stomach with one firm stroke, and turned to Nate. Here's the first picture of your daughter, and your last day in this marriage. She placed the envelope into his hands. No raised voice. No accusation. Just finality. Claire walked past him, her heels echoing against the tile floor, and didn't look back. Nate opened the envelope. Inside, high-resolution photos of him and Aubrey at the Seaport Hotel. Credit card records showing expensive dinners on nights he claimed to work late. Text threads with time-stamps. The recovered voice memo, and, atop it all, a signed copy of the divorce petition. He stood there, stunned, while Aubrey looked over his shoulder. Mouth slightly open, her face went pale. Claire didn't pause. She walked down the hall, past the framed sonograms, through the quiet lobby, and out into the sharp October air. She never heard the gasp that came when Nate reached the final page. 3 days after the ultrasound, Nate comes home to find the locks changed, and the rules rewritten. The sun dipped low behind the Boston skyline, casting long golden fingers across the trimmed hedges outside the Silverwood Lane townhouse. Inside, the only sounds were the rhythmic ticking of the antique wall clock and the clink of tea being poured into porcelain cups. Claire stood in the front hall, watching Jenna through the archway as she placed her mug down with practiced precision. The house smelled of lemongrass and varnish, clean, hollow, a space no longer shared. He'll come storming in, Jenna said. Are you ready for that? Claire nodded. I'm ready for everything except pretending anymore. She turned toward the door and glanced at the new deadbolt, pristine against the white frame. That morning, a polite locksmith with thick glasses and soft hands had spent 2 hours replacing every lock. Claire had watched silently, sipping iced tea, arms crossed. He'll know what this means, the locksmith had muttered, twisting his wrench. I know, Claire had replied. Now, standing in her fortress, she caught a glimpse of the old key still hanging on the hallway hook, a symbolic remnant. She reached up, pulled it off, and held it between her fingers. Cold, obsolete. She remembered Nate once teasing her. You'll always have a key to my heart. The irony twisted into a dry laugh. At exactly 6:18 p.m., tires screeched outside. Nate's voice erupted seconds later. Claire, open the damn door. The door rattled under his pounding fists. Claire didn't flinch. Jenna joined her in the hallway. Arms folded, jaw tight. He pounded again. Claire, what the hell is this? You can't just lock me out of my own house. Claire stepped forward and spoke through the door. Calm as glass. You live at the Seaport now. This is no longer your address. This is insane, he shouted. You've lost it. Jenna reached beside the foyer table and pressed a button on her phone. Recording, she said simply. You're being cruel, Nate hissed, voice muffled through the thick door. You're carrying my child. Claire's reply was measured. You mistook my patience for weakness. Suddenly, the pounding stopped. There was a pause, then the door handle rattled hard. A thump, a second one. Jenna stiffened. Nate barked. Let me in, Claire, or I swear to God. He pushed hard. The deadbolt groaned but held. Claire stepped back, unlocked her own phone, and dialed. Boston PD, what's your emergency? She didn't raise her voice. My husband, who is no longer residing here, is attempting to force entry into my home. I have a restraining request pending and video evidence of him threatening. The dispatcher took her information. Units were nearby. Nate was still shouting when the patrol car pulled up. The flashing blue lights painted streaks across the foyer. The knock came, but this time from a badge. Sir, step away from the door. Are you kidding me? Nate yelled, backing onto the porch. She's throwing me out of my own. Sir, hands visible. Claire didn't open the door again. She stood behind it, heart steady. Minutes later, through the window, she watched them escort Nate to his car. His face was twisted, lips curled back in something feral. He locked eyes with the front of the house, eyes burning through the glass. You think this is over? He growled. I haven't even started. Aubrey's apology arrives not as tears, but as an email formatted like a confession. The screen glowed faint blue in Claire's darkened office, casting shadows across stacks of paper and half-drunk tea. It was past midnight, the townhouse utterly still, except for the soft hum of her desktop and the occasional creak of the floorboards cooling under autumn air. Her inbox dinged once, a single, unexpected message. Subject: I'm sorry, you don't owe me anything. From Aubrey.Lane@bellmail.com. Claire hesitated for one breath. Then she clicked. Claire, you don't know me, but I owe you an apology I don't expect you to accept. I didn't know you were pregnant. I didn't know he was still living with you. I didn't know anything real. I guess. Nate made it all sound so clean, like you were separated but sharing space. Like the baby was a maybe. He said he was trying to be honest with you. That you were the one who wouldn't let go. Claire closed her eyes. She heard the voice memo again, that laugh. That breathy whisper. I can't wait to meet your little secret. It wasn't flirtation anymore. It was complicity born of ignorance. The email continued. He said I made him feel seen. That you were cold, clinical, never home. That your marriage was done in all but paperwork. I believed him. I was stupid, but I swear to you, I never meant to hurt anyone. I just didn't look hard enough. Claire read every word, twice. Aubrey ended with, I'm out of the picture now. I told him I wouldn't be his alibi anymore. Whatever comes next, he's earned it. I hope you bury him in whatever way feels right. Claire clicked away from the message. No reply. She wasn't writing her forgiveness into the ether tonight. A second ping. This one was from Marshall. Subject. As requested, asset review. She downloaded the attachment. A thick PDF opened slowly, pages upon pages of transactions. Flagged activity. Offshore accounts in Nate's name linked to shell corporations in Delaware and the Caymans. Wire transfers. Hidden equity. Tax discrepancies that would make any auditor twitch. Claire leaned back in her chair, her hand resting lightly on her abdomen. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. She printed every page. The printer whirred softly, methodically, feeding paper into a neat stack beside the folder already housing the divorce papers. Each sheet felt like a chess piece. A black bishop here, a white knight there. And Nate? He'd already moved his queen into check without knowing it. Later that morning, Jenna arrived with bagels and caffeine. She set them down, took one look at the documents, and exhaled. Oh, honey, he's not just dumb, he's criminally dumb. Claire handed her a manila folder. He's about to learn the difference between court filings and public opinion. Jenna raised an eyebrow. So, no court? No, Claire said. We're not going to court. We're going to the court of consequence. Jenna grinned. That's going to sting. As she sipped her coffee, Jenna reached into her tote and pulled out a thin black folder. No label, no crease. She laid it gently on the table between them. Claire raised an eyebrow. Jenna opened it slowly. Inside, a single sheet of paper. One word scribbled in Jenna's slanted hand. Ace. When blackmail feels like mercy. You've clearly underestimated the woman you betrayed. Claire's pulse remained steady as she entered the boardroom on the 24th floor. The table gleamed beneath the morning light filtering through floor-to-ceiling windows that framed Boston Harbor. The view was breathtaking, calm water, powerful ships, and the silent reminder that tides could shift without warning. Jenna followed, closing the door behind her. Remember, she whispered, sometimes, you don't win in court. You win in the silence before it. Claire nodded, placing a slim black folder, marked only with her name, on the table's polished surface. She didn't smile. She didn't tremble. She exuded quiet authority. Moments later, Nate and his lawyer, Stephen Carr, strolled in. Nate's confident smirk suggested he expected routine negotiations. He accepted a seat without glancing at Claire. Stephen adjusted his tie, already reaching for his case. Jenna didn't waste a second. She opened the black folder and slid it toward them. Claire watched as Stephen leaned forward, the smirk fading from Nate's features. Treasury analysis, offshore wire transfers, shell companies spelling an impressive web of misdeeds. Jenna said evenly, this is not speculation, it's all documented. Claire took over. Here's the offer. I keep full custody of Lily. Assume sole ownership of Silverwood Lane. And take the entirety of our shared assets. In exchange, you walk away quietly. No court filings, no arrests, no scandal. Silence filled the room. Nate stared, mouth slack. Stephen's gaze flicked between Claire and his client. Let's talk, Stephen said, lowering his voice. Nate nodded, and the two slipped behind the glass wall for a sidebar. Claire barely exhaled. Jenna folded her hands. This is it. Minutes passed. Then Nate re-entered. His expression drained. He sank back into his chair and picked up a pen. Claire watched him write. Sign. Initial each page. When he finished, She slid over another sheet, labeled Confidentiality and Future Claims. He paused, looked at her, thumb hovering. Protecting Lily, Claire said softly. He signed. He finally spoke. You'll regret this. Claire's lips curved into the faintest smile. No, you will. Silence fell heavy in the room, broken only by the hum of the city drifting in through glass. Claire exhaled. The water beyond the window rippled imperceptibly. The tide had turned. Freedom isn't free, but silence, properly priced, is priceless. Claire stood in the hallway of the Silverwood Lane townhouse, staring at the half-empty walls, once crowded with curated art prints and polished sconces. The space now echoed slightly when she walked. Every removed item seemed to echo back some former version of herself, the woman who tried to decorate away betrayal. In the kitchen, Jenna flipped through the final legal documents one last time. Custody, assets, non-disclosure, it's all airtight. She said, I'd trust this file with a federal judge. Claire nodded, her fingers tracing the edge of a manila folder. She wasn't smiling. A soft buzz vibrated from her phone. Marshall. She picked up. Everything's quiet. His voice murmured through the line. SEC hasn't been tipped. Nate's assets remain unflagged. You've got what you wanted. Claire. She let the silence stretch before replying. That's the thing, Marshall. I'm not sure I ever wanted silence. I wanted truth to matter. He fears prison and scandal. Marshall said. You gave him neither. That's mercy. After they hung up, Claire lingered by the window while Jenna packed up her briefcase. You don't owe him destruction. Jenna said. You gave your daughter a clean slate. That's enough. But Claire wasn't looking at Jenna. Her gaze had settled on the small drawer under the foyer table, the one Nate used to call his junk vault. She opened it slowly and pulled out a faded birthday card. To my North Star. It read in Nate's script. You make the chaos make sense. She stood over the sink, struck a match, and let the flame lick the corner of the card. It curled, crumbled, turned black, and drifted into ash. Jenna watched without comment. Later, as the townhouse fell quiet again, Claire moved through the nursery, now filled with soft creams and pale greens. A mobile spun gently in the draft. The crib had yet to hold a heartbeat outside her body. At the front door, a courier envelope waited. She picked it up, recognized the handwriting instantly. Nate. She turned it over. Request for visitation was scrawled in neat blue ink. Claire didn't open it. She simply walked to her office, placed it in the bottom drawer, and shut it gently. Some things deserved silence. Others deserved to be buried. Unread. In the room painted for peace. A cry pierces the stillness, and with it, a new beginning. Snow coated the world outside Boston General like icing on silence, muting car horns and softening streetlights into halos. Inside the maternity wing, the walls pulsed with quiet urgency, monitors beeping steadily. The shuffle of nurses, the low, rhythmic breath of women between contractions. Claire clutched the side rail of her hospital bed, sweat glistening on her brow. Her body strained against wave after wave, but her mind, remarkably, held. Jenna sat nearby, cross-legged in a plastic chair, flipping through a dog-eared novel she wasn't reading. She glanced up between contractions and offered a smirk. Still convinced you'd rather do this natural? Claire exhaled sharply. Remind me, again, why we thought hypnobirthing was a good idea. Jenna leaned forward. Because you're stubborn, and brave, and because you said you wanted her born into light, not shadows. A pause. Another contraction. Claire gripped tighter. They had painted the nursery in soft amber orange weeks ago. Claire brushing the color herself with deliberate strokes, thinking of dawns and firelight and all the warmth a child might deserve. No gray, no navy, no hiding. The doctor's voice was calm but firm, almost there. Let's breathe through this one together. Jenna offered her hand, and Claire took it, squeezed, hard. Minutes folded into moments. Then, a final push. A cry. It wasn't loud. It wasn't cinematic. It was real, raw and human and impossibly small. Claire's shoulders fell back against the pillows as they placed her daughter on her chest. Slippery and warm, she blinked hard, overwhelmed by the simplicity of it all. The skin on skin. The smell of newness. The weight of love. You're not anyone's secret, Claire whispered into her daughter's damp hair. Not now. Not ever. Later. The lights dimmed. Lily slept in a bassinet beside her, arms curled like commas. Jenna dozed nearby, feet propped on the footrail. Claire reached for her left hand. The wedding band had slipped down her knuckle during labor, loose now. Irrelevant. She turned it once, twice, then slipped it off entirely and looked at it for a long beat. No anger, no drama, just a quiet decision. She stood, padded barefoot to the small red bin labeled biohazard waste, the only container in reach. And she dropped it in. It didn't clatter. It didn't resist. She returned to bed, slid under the thin blanket, and stared at her daughter. A nurse entered gently, clipboard in hand. "We're filling out the birth certificate. What's her full name?" Claire's eyes didn't leave Lily. Lily Claire Green Whitmore. Names are anchors, and Claire refuses to let her daughter be anchored to betrayal. The waiting room at the Boston Registry office was lit with sterile fluorescence. The kind that washed color from skin and soul alike. Rows of chairs lined the walls like question marks waiting for answers. And Claire sat among them with Lily cradled against her chest, swaddled in a pale gray blanket. The child stirred, cheeks flushed, eyelids fluttering. Claire smoothed her thumb across Lily's forehead, heart heavy with the weight of syllables. Green or Whitmore? A voice called her name, sharp. Official. Claire Whitmore. Window 4. She rose, adjusted Lily against her shoulder, and stepped forward. Behind the plexiglass partition, a clerk in horn-rimmed glasses smiled dutifully and slid forward the name registration form. "You've left the surname blank," the clerk noted. "Just to remind you, once filed. Changes require court order." Claire nodded, pen in hand, heart not yet following. Outside, the sky was the color of ash, snow melting into grime along the sidewalks. February in Boston. Brutal. Honest. Claire looked down at the form again. Whitmore. Green. She saw both etched in stone. Imagined a child answering roll call, signing forms, speaking introductions. She thought of playgrounds and interviews and first kisses. Of inherited burdens, unspoken stories. A flicker, a voice from years ago. In the back of a dark hallway. "You carry his name," her mother had whispered, half drunk, looking at a manila envelope filled with child support checks. "Don't carry his choices." Claire's pen touched paper. Lily Claire Green Whitmore. 2 names, 2 paths, but only one will define her. She signed. As she handed back the form, the clerk stamped it without comment, only nodding with bureaucratic finality. "You're all set. Congratulations." Claire stepped out into the cold, tugging Lily's hat lower against the wind. Her chest felt lighter. Not free, exactly, but right. Back home, the townhouse was still and warm. A single lamp glowed in the nursery, casting soft gold across the orange walls. A padded envelope waited on the kitchen island. Her name on it, in Nate's lawyer's handwriting. She didn't open it. Instead, she fed it into the shredder by the pantry door, watching as it dissolved into confetti. Strand by meaningless strand. The same wall that once held their wedding photo now frames a sunrise and a smile. Morning spilled golden light across the polished floors of the Silverwood Lane townhouse. The air smelled of cinnamon and tangerine, Claire's latest candle blend, flickering softly in glass jars that lined the sideboard. Outside, spring finally broke through the last of Boston's frost. And inside, warmth bloomed from every corner. In the dining area, a round table was set for 3. Brunch was light but beautiful: spinach frittata, strawberry preserves, fresh sourdough Jenna brought from a bakery she claimed had divorced bread energy. Claire laughed when she said it, then actually believed it when she took the first bite. Lily, now 6 months old, babbled from her high chair, cheeks full, eyes brighter than sunrise. She wore a yellow onesie with tiny ducks and kept swatting at the silver spoon Jenna dangled like bait. On the console table behind them stood the old wedding frame. Empty. Claire had taken the photo out weeks ago. It had left a pale rectangle on the wall, a faint echo of what once was. Jenna wiped her hands on a cloth napkin and reached into her tote. "Okay, your real present." She handed over a rectangular gift, wrapped in linen and tied with soft twine. Claire peeled it open. Inside was a new frame, brushed brass, warm-toned, minimal. Inside it, a photo of Lily, mouth open in laughter, hands curled mid-flail on a burnt orange blanket. Claire blinked once, twice, then took the frame without a word, walked to the wall, and hung it exactly where the wedding portrait once leaned crooked. Straight this time. perfectly centered. She stepped back and smiled. That's better. A knock came at the door. Claire answered to find a young woman in a smart blazer and camera bag. Hi, I'm Paige, with interiors today. Your name came up from the Green Design Tour. We'd love to feature your space in our May issue. Claire tilted her head, amused. Funny, this place used to be my biggest performance. Now it finally feels like mine. As Paige scanned the room with professional awe, Claire picked up a small card sitting beside the vase of daffodils. Marshall's handwriting was unmistakable. You rebuilt more than a home. She tucked it into her pocket. The photo shoot would wait. Claire wandered room to room, the magazine representative trailing, snapping shots. Each wall told a different story now, not of perfection, but of perseverance, of orange-painted nurseries and burned letters, of whispers in hospital rooms and names chosen with spine and soul. When the last photo was taken and Paige packed up, Jenna said goodbye, and the townhouse fell quiet again. Claire stood in the hallway, looking at the framed photo. Then, a soft buzz. The baby monitor lit up. A sleepy coo echoed through. Claire leaned close and whispered, "Let's go see what the future sounds like." Claire rebuilt more than a home. She reclaimed the right to live unshadowed by betrayal. The woman once underestimated became the architect of justice. Not through vengeance, but with unwavering precision, like the final chord of a long-forgotten melody. Truth may arrive quietly, but when it does, it reverberates. Sometimes, justice doesn't roar in courtrooms. It whispers in the silence of a closed door and a child's first laugh. And no wall of lies can stand forever against the tide of truth.